think when I was at Apple and I attended my first Burning Man back in 2014, that's when the fire for this spirituality started for me. I think I was a spiritual person for majority of my life, but this was the kick that I needed. This was the door that was open for me.
You're listening to Joey's Taxi, conversations from the seat of awareness. No fixin', no forcing, just shared presence. Let's ride. Hello, and welcome back to Joey's Taxi. Today in the passenger seat, we have the Mahyar. Mahyar is a voice from the in-between, where silence speaks and truth softens the noise. He holds space like still water, steady and deep, and invites you not to follow, but to feel. His presence is less about answers and more about awakening. Welcome, Mahyar, to the show.
Yeah. Hi, Joey. Good to see you. Good to be here.
All right, so let's go ahead and turn on the ignition and go for a drive. Mahyar, you shared a photo with us, and I would love for you to share your insights on this photo, why you selected it, what meaning it has for you. But let's start off with at least describing it, because those who are just listening are not going to be able to see it. So if you can describe it and then the meaning behind it for you.
That's a photo of a man and a woman sitting, and the woman is putting her hand on the man's face, and he's holding her hand. And there was this beautiful moment that I captured that was very meaningful to me, because there was this moment that I questioned that if I ever be able to see, which was not to jump into, make your podcast into a political podcast, but this is from Burning Man, when I was attending and I was sitting at one of the camps, and this Israeli man was sitting there sharing his stories. We were all sharing his stories, sharing some Turkish coffee, tea, and fruits, and this woman came, and people always ask, where are you from? What's your background? She said, I'm from here, and she wasn't Palestinian, but she was an Arab girl, and there was this moment where these two connected. It was such a beautiful moment that I just grabbed my phone and I took a photo where these two worlds, where I never thought they would see each other face to face and meet in the most human way. They met and they had this moment that was so precious for me, so beautiful. It's one of the moments that I hope that it can happen in real life, bigger context, when it comes to what's happening in the world at the time we're speaking. And it was very strange, because when you asked me, would you like to share a photo and something that we can talk about, for some reason this photo came to my mind with what's happening at this moment. And I wanted to share this with people, share this story, and maybe bring some hope that maybe we can be a little bit more hopeful, to see that maybe if we put away politics, maybe religion, and see each other just as souls, as humans, things can change. And yeah, I don't know how's this working for you as an icebreaker, but it was something that came up and I was like, I have to share. So yeah, here we are.
Absolutely. No, this is working out perfectly. It's really what's meant to be shared, and it's a beautiful story as well. A story of peace, worldly peace, earthly peace. And this photo, and for those who are listening, you can switch over to video if you're able to on YouTube or on Spotify. This will also be in the show notes, so you can look at the photo. There'll be a link there. When I saw this photo, I didn't know the story about the photo until now. But now hearing the story and putting it all together, it's quite a profound photo that depicts people, no matter what background you're from, what ethnicity, whatever is going on in your life, you can still come together, human to human. That's what it comes down to. We're just human beings here, supporting one another, and we're all in this journey together, walking hands together from your website. But it's about holding hands together, and we're walking through life together.
Yeah, that's a Ram Dass quote, actually, bring each other home. Yeah, beautiful, one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it. If you were to put a title or a description to this photo, as if it's a scene from a movie, is there a word or a series of words that you can relate to this photo?
You got me with that one. I have to think. I think the first word, if I want to just drop in and listen to what comes up, I think the word "seen" comes up. Seeing each other for who we are, and I think that's what really is to this photo, because they were able to see each other as a human at that moment. So yeah, that's what I would go with. Being able to see others. Yeah.
And that's seen as in SEEN. I think that is one of the most basic human qualities, is to be seen, heard, and felt.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. I would like to talk a little bit about, and I'm sure we can probably go on for a while, about Apple and how we both worked at Apple. But I'd like to just touch upon this, because this is how I discovered you. I was connecting with, or maybe I put a comment on LinkedIn, or I responded to one of your posts on LinkedIn, and then I saw that we both worked for Apple, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, right? Another fellow Apple employee here. Now, how do you go from, or what was this journey like from Apple? And I understand you do some video editing as well, some multimedia work, and now being this mindfulness teacher. How did that journey unfold for you?
I think when I was at Apple and I attended my first Burning Man back in 2014, that's when the fire for this spirituality started for me. I think I was a spiritual person for majority of my life, but this was the kick that I needed. This was the door that was open for me. One thing that I loved about technology is how this is also questionable at this moment in time we're talking, but it's the fact that it can bring people together. For someone who was an immigrant, to this country, I remember back in the day, I used to write paper letters to my family and friends, back home. You waited months for them to receive it, read it, and send, something back. Things that I really liked about technology was this connection amongst people all over the world. And I always thought, how can that be used for humanity? So I always saw Apple as this innovative, company that was doing really cool things, and I was trying to find my voice. How can I be part of that? Even though my part was very small, I think it was very effective in my own way. I think the highlight of Apple for me and many people that I know is this connection and this group of friends that we found through working there. Some of my best friends are still from Apple. I know so many stories of people that I have gotten married by meeting at Apple. I always looked at technology as a way to better humanity, and I think at that time I kind of was really interested in what Steve Jobs was trying to do and was trying to push this technology. It was a very interesting and intriguing company for me at the time when I started working for them.
Mm. Then the transition from there to mindfulness work, it sounds like it was necessary to leave the company to pursue mindfulness, or was there something else that occurred for you there?
A little bit later, after I left the company, for me, I started exploring. I always wanted to do something with film and film production. I started exploring, and I somehow got pulled into doing a lot of YouTube videos and social media. I finally was working for this company in the Bay Area about 2.5 years ago, and I was producing video content for them, and I realized this is not what I want to do. This is when the massive tech layoff started happening, and I was lucky that I made it twice, and then the third time there was a cut, and I started asking myself, what is it that I really want to do? There was this moment that was like, what is my purpose? What do I want to do in this world? Since meditation had, saved my life back in 2017, I started looking into programs, and I wanted to start teaching, knowing that I have the right training and tools to bring this to other people, because there's so many, as you know, other schools of meditation and I wanted something that fit my background, which with tech and science, I wanted something that has been proven to work. That's when I found UCLA Mindfulness Teacher Training Program. I applied for it and got accepted. That alone has its own beautiful story and how it happened. So it happened a little bit later after I left Apple. I did start my meditation practice seriously right after I left Apple, actually.
And how did meditation save your life in 2017?
2017, I had two major things happen in my life. One of them was I went through a big heartbreak, which was something that I didn't expect. A few days later, my sister was diagnosed with a stage 4 breast cancer. So I found myself very lost and confused. So I did two things because I didn't know what else to do. There was no one that could help me, and I had to show up not only for myself but for my family and for my sister. I found a new therapist that could help me, and then my aunt, which this kind of journey, I a little bit owe it to her. She came to me and she said, "Hey, there's a new meditation studio that just opened up, and I wanted your sister to come and see if this is something that you guys can take advantage of." I started going there and I was like, this is great. It's not a yoga studio. It's specifically a meditation studio. Everything that was being taught and offered was around meditation. I started diving deep and I started taking classes, and sometimes I would go to 3 classes in a day. The staff, would approach me and say, "Are you okay? This is your 3rd class." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just trying
just trying to get the hang of it. Leave me alone. I'm trying to be mindful."
Exactly. So yeah, that's what happened. Through if I want to bring one thing to really explain what mindfulness and meditation has done for me, it really allowed me to learn about my brain, how my brain works. Put everything else aside. If I have to pick one thing, that would be I learned about my own brain and how my brain is controlling not only me but my life, because my actions are all related to what's happening. With that, I was able to go deeper in my journey, learn about mood regulations and how I can help myself kind of maneuver through this journey of going through a breakup and trying to show up for people that needed me at a time.
It sounds like this all unfolded at this meditation center that you were going to. Would this be the first time you were exposed to meditation or formal meditation? Was at this center? Were there any earlier experiences in your life that you kind of connected a bit with it, but not fully?
I was connected to it before, but if I want to be honest, I bring this up because both of us, we're doing this now, and for people that are listening to this or watching this, I want them to bring a bit of a light and awareness. A lot of us, we didn't know if we're doing this right or wrong. So for me, I feel like some of my practices might have completely been wrong and not really understood what meditation and sitting is. Sometimes I know it had its own effect, because when you sit in silence, even if you're doing things wrong, still there are some things happening in the background. There are things that will come up, do their own things. I wouldn't say it was as ineffective, but I don't think I was doing it completely right. The classes and being able to sit with different teachers really allowed me to learn what it is, learn different schools of meditation, and start fine-tuning this practice.
Which formality or which type of meditation is it that you learned from the center?
There were so many different schools of meditation that it was offered, but I remembered my first time that I sat with a teacher who was actually teaching mindfulness. I had this very interesting, beautiful visual that almost felt like it was a bit like a psychedelic, and it was very strange for me. And I went to her and I said, I had this kind of a experience, and I remember she smiled and she's like, "Oh my God, this is like the highest compliment. It seems like you were very in tune and connected." That's when I knew that something is happening, and that was when I was like, "Oh, mindfulness, let me find out what it is." And I didn't go deep, but it did something for me that when you sober and you have that experience, it was very intriguing and interesting. I was like, oh, I need to find out what is this about, because this was something I've never experienced before.
It's interesting to explore meditation the way that you've explored it. I explored it for 20 years. And it wasn't until that a good friend of mine recommended this app to me called Waking Up by Sam Harris. He's an American philosopher and neuroscientist. When I started this 30-day meditation, there was a free course on there. And I was like, oh, is that what meditation is? Before this, I was doing a lot of mind work, the visualizations and the gratefulness, which is all fine and dandy. But then when I learned that it's, the school of thought is with this particular meditation is just to sit, as Vipassana, you sit with yourself. Allow these thoughts, emotions, and sensations to flow through your experience, but that to learn that you are not them. They are just in this field of consciousness. Then after that 30 days, I'm like, wow. And I started feeling the difference. When I was sitting, it was more intentional. When I say intentional, about creating this intentional space throughout my day. There was no intention going into it saying I need to feel a certain way, I need to have a certain outcome. I have a prioritized list of things I need to do in this meditation. It's like, no, just sit with it. Thank you for that. Now, speaking about mindfulness and meditation, you have here I saw on your website as well, that you trained, and you mentioned this, at UCLA for mindfulness facilitation. Do you have a favorite or memorable experience from your training at UCLA?
Yeah, there were so many great moments. The other one might be a little bit longer story, so I'll stick to a shorter one. But I remember the first night because we had 4 practicum, and the first one was all on Zoom. It was held for 3 or 4 days, I believe. And it was one of the closing nights. One of my favorite teachers, Marv Bilzer, was closing the night with a guided meditation. I remember the meditation by these 3 sentences or 3 words. He says, you belong here, we belong here, and we are needed here. And I remember just the warmth of my tears just running on my face. I knew at that moment that I'm in the right place, I'm in the right space. I'm so glad that I chose to be sitting with these teachers, especially with Marvin, which is a beautiful human being. I always keep him close to my heart. That was one of the first incidents that I always remember when I think about the program and how I started.
That reminds me of a time when I used to work at Best Buy. You living in America know about Best Buy. For those who don't know, Best Buy is a big box electronics store in the United States. They also have locations in Canada. I remember having a very difficult conversation with the manager, and he essentially told me if I didn't do my job, he would find someone to replace me. Back then, I was very fearful. I was always a yes man, yes ma'am. It really hurt me. I didn't know how to express myself in that moment. Here we go back to, I don't know how it is now at Best Buy when you work there, but back then it was non-commission. We got paid by the hour. He was telling me that essentially my numbers weren't to expectation. My sales numbers, accessory attachment, and so forth. And I was like, wow, there's just, this is during a time when there was barely any customers walking into the store. So I was like, what can I do if there's no customers here? I'm doing the best I can. So I felt a lot of hurt in me, a lot of fear that I'm going to lose my job, and I need to do as he says and do it to the best of my ability. That night I went to a yoga studio I think it's in Costa Mesa in California, called Raw Yoga. And I went to Raw Yoga, and I went to 2 classes back to back. One of them was a formal sit-in meditation class, and that was my first time doing a formal sit-in of that type. It was followed by a Vinyasa flow yoga class. At the end, when we almost went to Shavasana, that last stage of the practice, I just started crying. I cried on that yoga mat. Thankfully, the lights were off, so no one could see me, and I did it as quietly as possible. But I was able to release, like what you said with the phrase that Marvin shared with you. When there's somebody who is experienced and they can share words or even movements for that matter, like there was in my case in yoga, it can be quite transformational and releasing and healing at the same time. Very powerful stuff, Mahyar.
Thanks for sharing that story. That's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. On your website, I love the quotes you have on there, like we just talked about the Ram Dass one. I'm going to talk about another one here. The heart of man is very much like the sea. It has its storms, it has its tides, and in its depths, it has its pearls too. This is from Vincent van Gogh. Mahyar, you also guide men's circles. How does this tie into masculinity or the idea of being a man in current day society, at least in the United States?
For a long time, I felt like I was a representative of men in our society. For some reason, I had to defend men and try to prove that there are good people out there, especially when it comes to the masculine part of community and society. But to be honest with you, now that I talk to you, I don't think I am a representative or I can be someone who can do this, because we all come with different personalities and we all have so many different layers that we carry, and in some ways some are beautiful, some can be hurtful. And I can say, to answer that question, is I hope that people can find who they are. That's the goal. First and foremost, accept and embrace that character, those layers that they carry in, because this is what I tell people from the beginning, since we were a kid, through our family and parents and our schools and gatherings and tribe and community, we've been told who we should be. For me, majority of the work that I like to do with people is to kind of help people unlearn things that are not serving them, and to tap into that wisdom inside of them so they can accept and hopefully love who they are at their core. So can I define masculinity? Can I tell you what I think it is? Yeah, I have my own ideas, but it doesn't represent even my own small community, because my friends and I, we are so different, but yet connected deep down. We accept each other for our differences and for who we are. We do share a core of values that are very important to us, of course. It's not like we just accept everyone and we're just singing Kumbuya and we're like, yeah, come on in. We do have a set of values, and that is beautiful that it's been shared. We maybe have the same outlook on the life, but it doesn't mean that we don't accept other schools of thoughts or different personalities. So for me, I would ask, what does masculinity mean to you first? If I'm working with you as a man, and you want to explore more into it, before you come into me for answers and I try to teach you something else, who do you want to be? How do you want to be represented? How do you want the world to see you? Let's talk about that first. Let's see the beauties and some of the ugliness of what you've been told and see if they're accurate, your being. So let's explore that first. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's what comes up to me, and yeah.
It totally does. And I remember my partner, we visited Portugal a couple of weeks ago. Actually, we just got back this week. We were in Portugal, and I remember being in the car with her and one of her friends, and they were driving extremely fast. It was a male friend. She told me afterwards, because I heard them having a discussion. They were talking in Portuguese. I don't know Portuguese so well, but I know that their tone of voice wasn't so good. And then I remember, I was like, we actually had this conversation reflecting on our trip, and she's like, I don't know why men have to be so macho when it comes to driving fast, and it's like Fast and the Furious sort of thing. And it was raining that night as well. He had a few drinks and a little sleep. So yeah, and she's like, talking about me, I'm the only guy in her life who actually doesn't do these things, because when I'm tired and we're driving, I tell her, like, I pull over, can you take over the wheel? Because I've driven intoxicated before, I've driven sleep deprivated. And it's almost, they say it's more dangerous than drinking while driving. And so I've done this before and got into very close calls. Now at this point in my life, why risk it? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Life is about taking calculated risks if we can. I'm very known for if it's late at night or even during the day and I'm tired, I'm going to pull over. Hey, sweetie, can you take over the wheel for me? And she's very happy to do that. It's about this balance and about determining what is a certain label for us, or masculinity. What does it mean for us? Because then from that we can determine what our programming has been like through the years, and then have a more of a collaboration and a dialogue instead of it being a monologue and trying to say, this is what I think, masculinity is, and you have to believe it my way. No, it goes both ways. We all have our unique life experiences. So I really appreciate your approach to this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it goes back to the photo, and when you ask me what word stands out, and I think the word seen. I don't think a lot of us are being seen, especially when it comes to men, and let's see if we can give people the chance to be seen and heard before we can tell them what we think is the right thing to do, because I don't think I know what's the right thing. I'm exploring this myself. It goes back to that quote of Ram Dass. We're walking each other home. We're exploring and we're walking together, holding hands, and we're trying to see what is this going to look like. And like you said, we both carry that both masculinity and femininity, and that's something to explore. What does that mean for us? Do I want to stay in my masculine side all the time, or can I allow the feminine to come? What does that mean even? Let's explore that a little bit. Let's talk about it. Let's see what does that come up for you before I tell you how is it for me, so you can explore that through my experience. This is your experience. This life is your experience, and that's why I think the conversation needs to be shifted and change a little bit, so people have the opportunity to think for themselves, to feel for themselves mostly, and see what does it look like to be a man in this world for them.
This conversation reminds me of that yin-yang symbol. And it's that balance between masculine and feminine, but each side of that yin-yang has a representation of the other sexuality, so the other energy, I should say. The masculine has a part of the yin in it, right, and the yang, and so they both balance each other out, and it's about discovering what that balance is for us. When we can have that balance and know when to have more masculine or more feminine, and depending on the situation. For example, when Anna, my partner, comes home, I do my best to be present with her because she's coming from a very masculine-driven job. She works in a pharmacy, so she comes here sometimes still in that mode of like needing to do. I'll take it under control. And it's like, no, you're home. It's time to relax. I'm going to prepare dinner. No, I want to help. No. I appreciate you wanting to help, but what I would love you to do to help me is to just sit on the couch and relax, and then I will take everything over from there.
I like it. I think I'm going to use your story as an example that sometimes you're the driver, sometimes you're going to be a passenger, and that's a perfect story that you shared, and I think I'm going to steal that and use that a little bit.
Please do. Absolutely. Sharing is caring, as they say. I had a chance to visit your website, Responsibility to Awe. Love the name, by the way. And in there you have another quote by Tara Brach, who I very much admire. And that is going to be, mindfulness is a pause. The space between stimulus and response. That's where choice lies. Now there's another quote that I read in one of her books. It's the Radical Compassion book. That is, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space is your power and your freedom. That's by Viktor Frankl. I am very inspired by Tara Brach, by the way. After reading her first book of Radical Acceptance, now I'm on Radical Compassion, and her teaching out the concept of RAIN. Now, if you break down RAIN as an acronym, it's recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. Really powerful stuff, and she has modified it, evolved it from another Buddhist teacher who used to teach us out in the 1980s, Cal McDonald. But it's been modified by Tara Brach. She combines psychology with mindfulness, so the Eastern and Western philosophies. She combines them within her retreats, and she does one-to-one sessions, or at least used to. She even has a RAIN protocol that you can do with partners on her website, something I am shortly going to be exploring. I would love for you to maybe elaborate on this quote, this pause. When studying mindfulness and Buddhist teachings, there's a lot of talk about this pause, this space between what stimulates us, what triggers us, and then the response, not the reaction to something, which usually comes from a place of fear, but it's that response coming from a place of compassion and love and kindness. So yes, can you elaborate on this quote and what that pause looks like for you?
I think what really comes up for me is what a lot of meditation teacher or mindfulness teacher talk about, where this practice eventually allows you to go from a reaction to response. There are moments in life that we are going to react to many things, and we have to. It's just our human nature, our frontal lobe trying to protect us. But most of us don't take that pause, that moment, to go from reacting to responding. When you practice meditation, and especially when you work with breathing, you start noticing that, going back to originally what I said, your thought patterns and how you are programmed to respond, and you catch yourself that I'm doing the same thing. When someone tells me this and they trigger me, for instance, I go back into the old ways of responding to it. Where when you catch that behavior, that thought, and if you are willing to pause for a second and take a deep breath, and instead of going into responding, to really processing and asking questions of, do I need to really respond to this the same old way that I have? With meditation, as you know, we teach to be curious and non-judgmental when we're sitting with our thoughts and feelings. So practicing applying the same principle to, this is interesting, I'm going to that same old pattern. Let me pause for a second. Why am I doing this? Why is my response the same old response as always? I've been triggered. It's interesting. Okay, let me be kind to myself. Let me take a pause. Do I need to respond? Maybe I don't need to respond even. Leave alone, just react. I can maybe sit with this for a second. That's what's been happening, and that's what I love is.
Thanks for writing along. If you'd like to stay connected, follow the podcast and leave a mindful review. Until next time, stay in the seat.